Hello, and welcome back to Inclusive Design 2024, brought to us this year by our platinum sponsors, Barrier Break and Intopia, and our gold supporters, Infoaxia and Tetralogical. If you're following along on Mastodon, don't forget that you can use the ID24 hashtag to ask questions. Alternatively, you can use the YouTube chat for the same thing, and we'll be keeping a lookout and rounding up any questions to ask our next presenter at the end of their talk. A reminder that Inclusive Design 24 is a respectful community, and you'll find our code of conduct on the inclusivedesign24.org website. However, now I'm delighted to be joining Juliet Alexandria as our guest host. Juliet, it's over to you.
Thanks so much for the kind introduction, Leonie. I am here to introduce Heather Neff, and she's going to talk to us today about Smart SVGs and how they are transforming the future of graphics. I'm really excited about what you have to share with us. Heather, take it away.
Great, thank you so much. So welcome to Smart SVGs, Transforming the Future of Graphics. My name is Heather Neff. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a 49-year-old white woman with a short pixie blonde haircut and blue eyes, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Equivalent, which is a graphics technology firm for advancing disability inclusion and digital sustainability. I've got over 24 years of experience with web development, user experience, and graphic design. My journey into disability started about 10 years ago when I tore a ligament in my shoulder, which of course led me to becoming an assistive technology user, as well as developing a very rare eye disease, which causes blind spots, extreme sensitivity to light, and I have had early onset cataract surgery, as well. I have another eye surgery in 2 weeks. So I identify with someone who has a unique low vision experience, and that's what's made me so passionate about making the ultimate graphic files. I'd like to start off with this quote from the Association of Registered Graphic Designers that says, "An accessible design is one that every user can adapt to their personal ability, experience, perception, understanding, and technological requirements." People with low vision and blindness often use assistive technologies to access digital content. They may rely on custom colors to improve contrast, screen magnification to enlarge text and images, and screen readers to listen to content and image descriptions. On screen, I do have a middle-aged woman wearing a headset and her hands are on the keyboard. Her eyes are kind of closed, and it looks like she's concentrating to listening to her computer. Image accessibility requires companies to meet various web content accessibility guidelines, or WCAG, success criteria. This includes best practices like not using text within an image and making sure you use an alternative text to describe your image. This also includes declaring images with no informational value decorative, which hides it from announcing to a screen reader user. But before you start exporting any image, we're talking about making sure that your actual design is also accessible. So ensure your image color choices are accessible by checking against the WCAG color contrast ratios. Please don't rely on any color alone to convey any information, and check your designs in various colorblind simulators to see if there's any issues. Also, when you're just adding a description, don't just add any alternative text. Make sure you're adding a contextual description. There's a reason why you've chosen to add a description to your image. Make sure you're actually capturing that image reason behind just describing it. It's very important to make sure you know why you're actually keeping it in there. So getting to the basics, image types. Now there's two major types. The first one is bitmap or raster images, which are pixel-based, so they do have a resolution. You're going to be familiar with some of these. The pixel-based images are PNGs, JPEGs, TIFF, GIF or GIF, WebP, and .avif. These are really only best for photography. Everything else should be in what's called a vector-based image, which is created using mathematical equations. These are definitely best for logos, icons, illustrations, and infographics. Some of the basic vector file types are Adobe Illustrator or .ai, EPS, vector-based PDFs, and SVG, which we'll be talking a lot about today. Since I am a visual learner, I have on screen two blue cats. On the left-hand side, I have a pixel-based image, which you can see very specific squares as it's made up of tiny dots of information. And on the right-hand side, I have a blue cat, which has outlines of the vector artwork with points and symmetrical lines and paths. And that's kind of the basic description of how different they are when you're building them. On screen, I have that blue cat, but without the details behind it. This is a vector-based illustration. What's actually happening behind the scenes when you're designing in Illustrator or Figma or any other vector-based program is that all of this code, which is on screen, is being generated right behind the scenes as you're actually designing in real time. What we're going to be discussing today is taking that code and not only making it fully accessible, but streamlining it to be also highly sustainable and energy efficient. I love this quote by Richard Westerna, which says, "An SVG is an alternative universe version of HTML, focused on graphics instead of documents." So what are SVG files? Well, it stands for Scalable Vector Graphics, which are an XML-based vector image format and document type. Unlike raster images, which are made up of pixels, SVG images are defined by geometric shapes. This allows them to scale infinitely without losing any quality. SVGs are resolution independent, making them ideal for responsive web design and high-resolution displays. They also support interactivity and animation and can be styled with CSS and manipulated via JavaScript, making them highly versatile for both web development and graphic design projects. Windows PC users can customize their desktop visual experience by selecting high or low contrast color schemes or any color pairing they prefer. Contrast theme settings apply these colors across the entire OS desktop system, including your browsers, and at the same time, they remove background images, which ensures consistent colors for backgrounds, foregrounds, and link colors, making content easier to see and read. Some interesting statistics around contrast themes is that 4% of all Microsoft users, or 56 million people, on every day start using these for very different reasons. Maybe sometimes they prefer because they suffer from migraines or they just have an astigmatism, but they're used for many different reasons. But we do know that about 50% of blind and low vision users heavily rely on turning on contrast themes. And these users, due to their very low vision, tend to choose a dark background since they're sensitive to light. And they also choose a bright aqua, a bright yellow color, as that is one of the easiest contrast combinations to see. Also, if you do this particular contrast themes on your website or project, it does meet the WCAG success criteria for visual presentation 1.4.8 that basically just says, hey, allow the user to choose the foreground and background colors as they surf. Dark mode is an accessibility feature, but you have to have a dark theme to allow your site to offer that dark mode experience. And this enables a more accessible user experience for people with and without disabilities. I personally have such a light sensitivity that I currently use a browser extension to force my entire internet experience to have inversions for most of the websites, because most websites do not have that dark theme experience. But it's something that's really, really important to realize that it does cause a lot of like migraines. It exposes us to more harmful blue light and can cause a lot of issues for many different people for different reasons. So a little bit about dark mode statistics as well. In fact, 82% of the entire globe is asking and requesting for dark mode, which is an astounding number. This is for all different reasons, including the fact that they perhaps want to have aesthetically different experience, but there's many different reasons that they might choose dark mode. And there's been a study done by Atlas Group that proved that on average, dark mode saves 28% on average energy consumption, which is a lot of energy, as well up to 63% of your mobile battery life on OLED mobile devices. And that is, if you could take anything away from this talk today, please tell your friends and family if they enjoy dark mode. Tell everybody that if they could all set their devices to dark mode, it would save the world a lot of energy. And I love this quote by Regina Gilbert. She's an author, speaker, and designer. And she said, just because it's legal doesn't make it accessible. In this next example, I'm going to be explaining some of the technology that we've invented. We have some patent pending IP around how to apply contrast themes to an SVG in a very specific way. On screen, I do have the MIT website, which is a bright white website. It does have a favicon icon up in the bookmarks area, as well as a normal logo up in the corner, which is a dark MIT logo, which also has the text of Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The next screen is going to be having applied a default accessibility setting for contrast themes with a yellow text selected. And when I change the graphic, what happens on screen is the favicon, which is dark, and the logo is dark, and the background is now dark. They completely disappear, which is ironically making that low vision user's experience so much worse in this default setting. So this is why we decided as sighted users that we saw this issue where low vision users might not have realized how much content they're missing out on. And this is where the IP that we were applying would then dramatically enhance the perception of these images for millions of users, which is a pretty big game changer for just to be able to actually perceive these images. So before we get into why we can design these things into being smart, I'm going to tell you exactly how today design and developer teams are actually working. On screen, I have 3 different logos, but of the same brand. It's fluid form, and there's a tagline on the main desktop version, which has an icon on the left, and it's logo text to the right. I also have a tablet version, which is more stacked, where the icon is now on top, and there's the logo text below it, but the tagline has been removed. And then just for mobile, it's just the icon. Now, a designer would also have to design this again for a dark mode version, which would mean 3 more images for the desktop, tablet, and mobile. And I switched them over to show a dark mode version of that logo and the brand, and for the desktop, the tablet, and the mobile. And the next steps is that the engineering team would then have to programmatically make sure that these work for each device, and of course for light mode and dark mode responsive behavior. And then there's a lot of maintenance. And as you can imagine, that's 6 images, which is a lot of work to maintain. So a Smart SVG are a single dynamic file, and they contain various layouts, responsive behaviors, and our patent pending IP, which allows SVGs to change the color of the user selected color choice. On screen, I do have a preview of what's going to be animated on the next screen, which is a screenshot of CodePen, where the SVG code is displayed in a column on the left-hand side, which has both HTML and CSS. And that code is actually displaying the logos in the center. This is also on a PC. So on the far right, you see the settings on the computer that would show you how to change from light mode to dark mode to a contrast themes. The next slide does have a repeating animation if you have a motion sensitivity. What's happening is that the window is being truncated a little bit, and you'll see that the desktop image turns into the tablet image, into the icon image with the different breakpoints. So there's 3 different breakpoints. It also responds to the dark mode instantly, as well as the contrast themes. And it's all in one single file. It can also be animated and reduced very much and optimized. That this file is only 7 kilobytes. So how did we do all this? So some of it is browser media queries. So Smart SVGs respond to the OS operating system of the device, and by the browser is basically pinging your computer and your phone saying, hey, what is this person's personalized accessibility settings? And it can tell what screen size you're on. So it knows if you're on a desktop, it knows if you're on a mobile. Another browser media query would tell you if you're using these custom colors. And another one would decide if you're in light mode or dark mode. Again, if you don't have a dark theme, you're not going to be able to serve up that dark mode experience that might be requested. Oops, slides went too fast. Hold on a second. Sorry for the delay. So my very favorite part about all of this is that the Smart SVGs work today. They're free and they're instant for the end user. This technology works with all major browsers and mobile devices and screen readers. And the best part is the user doesn't have to do anything to enjoy these enhanced smart graphics. So unlike an overlay where they have to pop something up and scroll through a bunch of choices to start customizing the website, these images are just automatically responding in lightning fast times to everything that you've already decided that you would like on your device, which is a really nice feature. This is actually quite complicated to learn how to code all of this. So we do have some software that we've just put out. We invite you to come over and check it out. It actually takes your SVG in light mode and will help you design your dark mode version. On screen, I do have a light mode version of a vector artwork that's just a little mountain with sun. And it's in a design program where you can see the hex colors, the background colors, and you can actually choose the hex colors and change them. You can also lock in your branding colors as you design the dark mode version. On the far right, you do see something very similar, but it's actually just the designing version of the dark mode version of your image. And once you've designed the image, you can then combine them all together using our tool to create your own Smart SVGs. We are working on a Figma plugin, so if you're interested in following along with that, you can visit our website at equivalentsvg.io and go sign up for our newsletter to find out when we launch our Figma plugin, which is coming soon. And the rest of this talk is all talking about the advanced engineering that we've been doing, a lot of research and development. As our custom engineering smart graphics undergo like super thorough checks to align with the strictest international accessibility standards, specifically WCAG level AAA. So this next set of slides is all going to be about some engineering that we've been performing. For example, one of the things we've been working on is enhancing the screen reader user experience by making sure that our custom Smart SVGs can be engineered to be just like a web page. That means they can be traversable, they can have semantic text, they are searchable, selectable, and SEO friendly, which means they can also be keyboard navigable. They can use unlimited characters, unlike an alt text that really asks you to have the best practice of only about 125 characters. Since you are now using live text within the infographic, it does open up for the design team in an infographic to use a bit more and actually have live text. Besides being similar to a website, you can also do metadata behind the scenes, such as a keywords, or adding something like image usage rights, which is kind of a really nice feature towards SEO. And it also can be used in what's called reader mode. So what the heck is reader mode? Well, it's a browser feature that strips away clutter like buttons, ads, background images, and videos, while also letting users customize the layout and theme to fit their reading preferences. It does strip out all the CSS from the website and can add a little bit of browser-specific styles. It is native to Firefox, Safari, and Edge, and it's preferred by people with both dyslexia and ADHD, as they can kind of customize the fonts, but it also removes all these distractions like an animated banner ad. And because it takes all the main body of the content of the text, it works really well for screen reader users who just want to get right to the information. And our Smart SVGs will work once the CSS has actually been removed. So images are the single largest contributors to page load times. Regular SVGs are usually quite large when they're exported. They come out with a lot of bloated code. So what we've been working on is making sure that we can optimize the artwork and the code to make it as small as possible. Smart SVGs can be optimized to save up to about 98% of the total file size of a pixel-based image. In fact, we've got logos at 1 kilobyte, and we've actually been able to make a favicon at 340 bytes, which is insanely small, which is talking about, just really, really tiny file sizes, which would then relate to the fact that websites, native apps, EPUBs, and any other type of document would then load instantly, which then helps ensure that your content is going to be fully accessible for people with low bandwidth, which is a nice accessibility feature as well. But because they're so small, they actually use a lot less energy being consumed on the servers, and it reduces a lot of data transfer and battery drainage for people who are using cellular Wi-Fi services. So a little bit about accessible SVG animation. So you can create amazing Flash-like interface components. I don't know if you guys all remember Flash in the early 2000s, but that can actually cause a lot of issues if you have like a vestibule disorder. So it can be actually kind of harmful. So when we do our custom SVGs, we try to avoid all of these issues by first listening to the user's personalized accessibility settings, which one of them is called prefers reduce motion as a media query, which would actually, the engineer would be able to either reduce or completely stop the animation. Also, when you're building these SVGs to be animated, you can add a start and stop button can have the controls there to control that animation, as well as making sure that it plays for less than 5 seconds to meet WCAG success criteria. And just really be aware to learn how to design your animation to be harmless. Obviously, you don't want anything strobing or flashing or anything that'd be really distracting. One of the things that's a great example is like a soft gradient change or a little loading animation. That's something that's not going to actually be too harmful or distracting to your user. Would be one of the best things you can do for making an accessible animation. So the rest of the particular talk is talking about the case studies with Atos. So all of these things we just talked about are going to be used within these actual examples. Atos Group is one of the global leaders in digital decarbonization, and they were the ones that helped do the study to prove how much energy dark mode saves, as well as really looking into how tiny and efficient SVGs are. So 2 years ago at the Zero Project conference in Vienna, Neil Milliken of Atos, who's the global head of accessibility there, had a fireside chat. And during that fireside chat, there was a live illustrator named Petra Ciplica, and she was there listening to Neil's talk and was scribbling away on a big notepad, adding a bunch of information, some words, a lot of little pictures of people, and trying to make a really cool infographic on the fly. But this infographic, because it was done by hand, was really actually quite inaccessible, as it was kind of hard to read. There was not really a lot of continuity to it. So you had to be there in person to really understand what was going on. And then Neil was asked to share this kind of widely, and he knew it wasn't accessible. So for last year's Zero project, he approached our company to translate this hand-drawn illustration into a Smart SVG. On screen, I have on the left-hand side the original hand-drawn illustration, and on the right-hand side is our Smart SVG, where we took their brand style guide and now has their logo and a bunch of iconography that they use in their company. And we've actually used their fonts and put in a very clean, organized version of their infographic. This is actually the tablet view, so it matches kind of a vertical view, but we also designed a desktop, which is horizontal, and a mobile version of this. It also had a dark mode version added and a mobile version. So the next 5 slides do have a little bit of an animated GIF animation if you have any motion sensitivity. So Smart Graphics instantly respond to dark mode. On screen, I do have an animation of the light mode desktop changing over to the dark mode version and watching a vector illustration of a person going in a dark room from very unhappy to very happy, as that can be a really big deal, especially at night for people who prefer to have a dark mode experience. And Smart Graphics instantly respond to these custom color themes. On screen, I do show the dark mode version of that desktop image, now changing over to the example for contrast themes, which has a dark background and the really bright text. And there's a user who's smiling as they can't really see it until it changed over to the brighter version and they become very happy. On screen, I do have an animation of a desktop image of this, but it's rearranging itself to become a mobile graphic, and you actually can see that it's going to be scrolling. We're having a little bit of a delay on our animated GIF, but it's basically saying it rearranges itself on mobile. On this screen, it's actually zoomed in onto the corner of the graphic where the cursor is selecting some of the text inside. Again, we're having a little bit of delay, but it's grabbing the text. You can see that it's actually selectable, indexable text within the image itself. And again, this is where you could have keywords behind the screen and actually use some of the text in a very positive way for many different reasons.
Heather, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me, but we're losing your sound quite badly at the moment. We can't understand what you're saying. It may be worth you skipping out of the Zoom and coming back to join us, perhaps, see if that clears up the trouble. For everyone listening into us at the moment, apologies. We're obviously experiencing a few technical difficulties right now, but hold tight. We will endeavour to get this sorted out as soon as we can and be back with you for the rest of Heather's talk.
Okay, so hopefully, can you guys hear me now? Okay.
We can indeed. That's much better. Thank you, Heather.
I'm so sorry about that. Let me do another screen share. Nothing like having technical difficulties.
Keep calm and carry on is the phrase, I think, but great that you're back.
Yes. Okay, so let me do a screen share here. So where we left off is on the Atos infographic case study, which we're actually going to be going over to a tab. But on screen, I do have the infographic, which is a timeline of the relationship that the Olympic and Paralympic Games has had with Atos. It starts off with logos in the Salt Lake City 2002 and is on a timeline with some information for what happened that year with each one of them. And there's actually 15 different logos on the timeline going from Salt Lake City 2022 or 2002 to today's recent Paris Olympics in 2024. And before I launch the actual tab, it is mobile friendly. It does have the contrast themed IP applied. It does use semantic selectable text. It has custom reading orders and tab stops for a better user experience for the low vision user. It's also been translated into 3 languages. It is reader mode friendly. And even though it has 15 different logos in it, with all of the optimization that we've done, the entire image, which is about probably 2000 pixels by 2000 pixels, if you had to look at it as the image, is only 61 kilobytes, which is actually quite small. I'm actually going to change over to a actual live, this is on Netify showing the graphic in real time. And I wanted to share with you guys how it's been translated into French and German, and they have different reading orders behind the scenes. The reading order is a little bit different, just some of the characters are hidden so that the low vision user's experience is really phenomenal. I'm actually grabbing the text with my cursor here, and you can see that this is all live text, even within these little areas within the graphic, which is pretty exciting. Again, these are 61 kilobytes for all of this information, which is lightning fast. I'm going to go over to the Olympics, Paralympics Atos website on atos.net, showing the same timeline. This is where I can actually truncate the browser, and you'll see that it switches over to the mobile view, which is actually really exciting to see how well it looks on the mobile view, where you can see that it's now rearranged using CSS, the same elements just moved around on the screen. And it makes a really great user experience because you don't trying to pinch and zoom and trying to read all that text when it's the desktop version of the image. And the text is still the live selectable text, and the same information has been provided to the user, but just now in a mobile format, which is pretty cool. I do have a browser extension. Even though I'm on a Mac, I have something that will actually change it over to show you guys how contrast themes and other settings will work on this. What I have is I'm going to be enabling the dark background with yellow text, and on screen the entire website for the atos.net goes dark background with a really bright text, and the SVG is picking up that color sharing how this would be really an improvement for people with low vision to see a really high contrast version. But it also actually can go back and show you a couple other ones. Here's just increased contrast. It would respond to grayscale, inversion, just pure inversion. It also would work with an inversion black and white. And again, back to that standard black and yellow, which I see that the Inclusive Design 24 is also using black and yellow. I don't think that's by coincidence, but it's a very common color combination. Now I'm going to disable this particular color and then go back to our presentation to finish this up. So I'm going to start the slideshow once again. Sorry, my cat's breaking down my door to my office. It's so ridiculous. Okay, so on screen, I do have the Atos Olympic Paralympic Timeline infographic, which is the technical report that we are sharing with Atos, which has just a screenshot of both the images, the desktop and the mobile version. And it says it has one breakpoint for the mobile. It has traversable text. It doesn't actually have a dark mode because their website didn't have a dark theme. It does have the contrast theme applied to it. And what's on the far right-hand side is actually the applicable WCAG success criteria. It's just a screenshot, so it only has the top level A and double A. As we went through with, crawling through this after we designed it, we were able to see where we didn't quite meet every single double A requirement. For one example is 1.4.4, which says resize the text. And the way that the infographic bends back and forth on a timeline, when you do start increasing the text size, it starts kind of overlapping. This is one thing that we've learned from these kind of live case studies, is that there's always room for improvement. But this actually is the WCAG requirements for a web page. This is an image. It's actually, it's actually an SVG. It's an image, but it's actually an XML document, which is kind of like a web page. So we're starting to get into this gray territory of kind of really pushing how far can we push these SVGs to become as compliant as a web page. And that's something that we're really trying to achieve with all the research and design that we're working on now to try to get to that point. And to finalize some of this is that the final benefits of Smart SVGs, by adopting Smart SVG technology and offering a dark theme, companies and organizations will increase the visibility and information that you can offer on your website and on your mobile apps. It would then, of course, increase your market share. It will improve both SEO and load time. It offers enhanced and personalized user experiences, which is really fun to have a personalized graphic that suits your needs. And overall, I'm really excited that if you were to do this and to offer a dark theme and to change your files into these tiny little files, you would reduce energy consumption at scale. So if you can only imagine that everyone started adding dark themes to their website and everyone started sharing how much dark mode, if you can tolerate it and you actually like it, if everyone started adopting it, it could be an unbelievable transformation of how much energy is being consumed by the human race. And right now, we could really use that, especially with Bitcoin and AI taking so much more energy. And I think it'd be absolutely spectacular to see how we could actually start reducing our energy consumption. In fact, the internet is the largest polluter in the world. And this is something that I'm hoping to share with everyone, is to please do that. I am dreaming a lot about how SVGs are the future. Personally, I think that SVGs are going to start replacing pixels in some ways, where a pixel becomes a point, and eventually all images will start becoming vector-based. Now, some photography, of course, will stay high-res and need very, very specific reasons to stay in photography, but I think there's a lot of leeway here in the future for images to all be transformed into code. That code should be optimized. It should be given alternative text. We're not sure exactly how AI is going to play into all of these future possibilities, but I do think there could be some good that comes out of all of this, which I'm really excited to keep exploring. And because SVGs are document type, this is something that we can start calling in audio files. You can call in pixel-based files. It's something where it's got a lot of potential to continue making the world more accessible as well. So to wrap up my talk, we believe everyone deserves an equivalent experience. I just wanted to let you know my contact information is on screen. My name is Heather S. Neff, and you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I hang out every day. And my email address is heather@equivalentsvg.com. Our website again is equivalent, that's it, EQUIVALENT, equivalentsvg.io. I also have a QR code on screen, which if you wanted to book a meeting with me, if we don't get to all of your questions today, I would love to talk to you about continuing our research and development to this exciting new field of taking SVGs as far as we can. And thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Heather.
Heather.
That was
That-
amazing. Thank you so much. We do have some questions from the audience if you would like to take a shot at those. We have one from Crystal Scott. She's asking, is using ARIA hidden true still the best practice for marking smart SVGs as decorative, or are there any more nuanced approaches to ensure assistive technologies properly ignore decorative SVG?
Luckily, I have my co-founder and lead engineer here to answer these questions, as I'm not personally an engineer, but he is. So Paul Neff, will you please take that answer?
Yes. Basically, that's still what I use. You can do roll none, but it may still register that there's an image there. ARIA hidden true is still probably the best way to keep it out of the accessibility tree when listening on a screen reader. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent. So as a follow-up question on my own behalf, is that still the case if you have used, the real text or any other of the kind of HTML structures you can embed, or do those need to be individually addressed within the SVG?
What I've been doing is I give it a role of figure, and then the graphical elements get ARIA hidden, and the text don't. The text elements get semantic ARIA markup. So, role heading, ARIA level 2, role paragraph, role text, etc., which keeps it visible for the screen readers and assistive tech.
Excellent. Crystal has a follow-up question, and she's asking if the best practice for naming for naming a meaningful Smart SVG is still using the title attribute, and then is the role image still required if it's meaningful, or does the Smart SVG kind of remove the need for that?
Role image is still ideal. Again, infographic, it's a combination of graphics and words, so you kind of want a more expanded take on it. But a regular, let's say a logo or basic graphic, I would do exactly that. I still use role image all the time, and then ARIA labeled by and put a title in there with an ID on it to reference.
Great, thank you so much.
That's results.
Excellent. I think we have one that's a little less technical. Let's see. So Heather, what are the broader implications for making smart infographics that respond to personal accessibility settings in terms of personalization and autonomy?
Oh, that's a tough question. Can you repeat it again so I can really understand what they're asking? What is
Yes. What are the broader implications of making smart infographics that respond to personal accessibility settings, specifically as it relates to personalization and autonomy?
It's a really tough question. I think that with the abilities of what we're doing now, I'm not really exactly sure the expansive use on that. Do you have a good idea? Say,
It just makes it accessible for more people.
yeah. That's a good question.
It just makes it available, which a lot of times prior wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm reflecting on this. I've heard the parallel that accessibility really is a security concern. If people are unable to do things on their own, then they're having to rely on others, potentially revealing sensitive information about themselves, things like that. So I can definitely see how the use of the smart infographics and the smart SVG would enable people, for example, who have to browse in dark mode to be able to use their banking app and not need the assistance of a loved one to help them in that kind of a way.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, right now, most infographics are a JPEG with if they do have an alternative text, it says something like comparison chart. And all of that information is usually hidden from the page. And this is just a great alternative than having to try to take all of that information and put it on the page separately as well. I think it's a nice way of actually improving all kinds of different things, especially like that mobile rearranging stuff, that non-pinch and zoom issue. It makes it a better user experience. It's hard to nail down some of the best business case scenarios that are coming. But for an example, if you're sitting at night and you're trying to order food, we know that DoorDash had told me that the #1 requested thing was a dark theme, and they need to have a mobile responsive environment. So if you could have a buy button right there, it could really, really enhance that user experience in many different ways, trying to make sure that you're really customizing to what that user really needs. And that has a potential to just expand like what is really superior user experiences when it comes to graphics. I'm also kind of excited to find, what could these live text graphics do, perhaps a little bit of translation using AI and opening up some of that kind of door to figuring out some of these tricky things that could be coming our way. But that might be helpful in the future as well to translate stuff for people that might need that as well within the infographic.
Absolutely. I mean, especially with the difficulties of translating ARIA labels and how that typically doesn't work. And it's really hard to maintain keeping them updated, and the text changes so they can fall out of sync and all of that kind of stuff. So that's a great point, Heather. We have a question, more technical for Paul, likely. What challenges arise in making SVG dark mode work consistently across different browsers and platforms? And how are you addressing that?
I haven't had too much trouble. I'm very explicit when I code in what colors are replaced where. And I've not had too much. We're using standard CSS media queries to look for the dark mode settings. So it's not like it's something off-brand to do it, which is great because it just works.
Yeah, it's lovely. Let's see. So we have one here. Is it possible to add, and I believe you covered this somewhat in the talk, but maybe they want a little deeper dive. Is it possible to add explicit semantic information to Smart SVG graphics using ARIA, for example, to represent data structures in Smart SVG infographics where the SVG itself doesn't have elements with those semantics?
Yes, you can, again, ARIA. Role heading level, ARIA level 1, ARIA level 2, role paragraph, role text, all work really well. In my testing, it works very much like normal semantic HTML would. And yeah.
Yeah, and we've been
so yes, it works.
We've been, of course, trying to work with low vision and blind users who have their own settings with all the different readers, JAWS, NVDA, talkback narrator, trying to really make sure that we've really thoroughly tested these. I even hired users that were using a Braille refresher display just to make sure that the content was definitely coming through and making sure that we were not missing out on any experience for people. I was just really concerned that we do thorough testings. Again, this is kind of, we're trying to break into like, what else could we do here and how far can we push this? So I'm asking the community to go check out our software, give us some feedback, really help us figure out where all the issues could lie. Because of course, with SVGs, they can be built in many different ways. Some of them can be extremely complex with tons of layers. It's all really interesting how we do have a learning center about how to make your vector art more optimized. Therefore, it's going to be a cleaner file, a smaller file. That is something that we're building out. We also have installation instructions for every single platform and possible thing you could want, like a React component. And we are really strongly advising people to learn that this is an OS level responsive graphic. So there are disclaimers saying, if you do make one of these things, make sure you have a dark mode before you install this, because it will respond with or without you if you put it inline into the website. Maybe you could also talk about the best practices of inline versus image tags. That might be something.
Oh,
Yeah.
semantic text, the SVG needs to be inline because
For
raster
folks who are unfamiliar, can you briefly explain the difference between inline?
Inline, you actually take the code of the SVG and you put it directly in the HTML of the page. So it's part of the actual DOM. Whereas an image does a call to a folder looking for a specific file and places that. You lose any of the built-in semantics if you use an image or a iframe or an object tag. I don't personally, I don't like the idea of using it any other way but inline. It just works so much better that way, and it streamlines things, fewer server calls, and
Yep.
streamlines it, does a good job.
Yep, it's good.
Great. So we have about 3 minutes left. And Heather, I know you touched on this quite a bit during your talk, but I think it's a really important point to discuss and emphasize a little bit more. Is there anything that you want to cover in a less formal manner about sustainability and smaller file sizes, faster load times, and the impact that has, and how we really need to start thinking about that in this current day and age?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm like completely obsessed with this because of when Neil Milken of Atos told me that they had done the study proving how much energy was actually being saved. And if you start looking, you do feel like you can find all kinds of information on this. Now, it's even things like just dimming your phone or your browser. Basically, what it happens is that right now, if you're in a light mode, it's like staring into a lamp. You're literally being objected to a lot of blue light. It causes a lot of harmful issues with your eye health. This is something where there's unbelievable statistics about how so many people in the future are going to have sight issues around the fact that they're constantly looking at these bright devices. They're too bright, and they're actually not actually very good for us to keep staring at all day long. Many people don't realize why they have so much eye fatigue or headaches. It's because of sometimes they're actually looking at these bright surfaces. Now, there's so many details that I have a whole extended deck on how there's so much more energy savings when you have less data transfers on the servers themselves. Like our Smart SVGs sometimes will replace up to 12 separate images on a server. So many enterprise level companies will have a high resolution, a low resolution. They'll have a dark mode mobile, a desktop mobile, and they'll all have all of these images that are being swapped out. And now we've turned that into one single file, and that file is like usually under 10 kilobytes. So instead of having all this stuff sitting on your servers waiting to be called, that is just sitting there chugging away, holding up space. One of the things we would do is reduce that dramatically as well. So server load times, data calls, all of that is part of the energy savings at scale. So I think that if we can continue to optimize these things to be like unbelievably fast as well. We're talking about user experiences in the most low bandwidth spaces. Obviously tonight my GIFs were too big for this YouTube channel, right? And that was something that was just because it's a GIF and it wasn't small, and therefore it was having some bandwidth issues. So if I could have been able to put SVGs in my Google Slides and have them do these things, it would have been a little bit different situation. But SVG adoption is also an issue because it can be a document type. A lot of times they're being blocked because they can contain malicious code. So a lot of times, like for example, they're not really used in email. They're blocked from that. They're not used in social media. So there's some applications where I'm hoping that over time people will realize that we can detect malicious code. We can prevent that. We can actually block it. Right. So I do think there would be a way for SVG to start. It would be lovely if it could be used in emails. Right. It's terrible that the human race has abused this and started, using it against for good, is using it for evil versus good. But I do think there's a lot of potential in this for it to continue to expand since it's been around since 1999. It works with all major browsers. It's extremely well adapted across the entire board. So since that particular image type is so already used, this is just the next step of this, which is allowing the community to realize that not only can you turn it to be extremely accessible, but you can also reduce the shit out of it size-wise, and therefore combining this to ultimate graphic file that's 100% accessible and super sustainable. And can you imagine a world where the entire internet started adopting dark mode and actually was giving these accessible experiences at lightning fast speeds, and how much energy we could all save together? And I'm like on a mission to change the world by doing this. So hopefully that's
Heather, you got me on board.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we're convinced, but we are, I'm afraid,
Yeah.
out of time. So I do need to wrap it up and say thank you, Heather. That was an amazing talk. Thank you, Paul, for joining us to answer questions. Thank you, Juliet, as well, for being a terrific co-host. Everyone, if you like this talk, please head over to our YouTube channel and hit the like button to show your appreciation. And while you're there, why not subscribe to our channel and keep up to date on everything else that's going on here at ID24. This year, Inclusive Design 24 has been brought to you with supporters' help, specifically Barrier Break, Intopia, Infoaxia, Tetralogical, Intuit, Adrian Roselli LLC, Assistive Labs, the Law Office of Laney Feingold, Skyscanner, and Vispero. Inclusive Design will be back on the hour with the 24th of our 24 talks for Inclusive Design 24 2024. Please join us then. Thanks, everyone.